What's good, Netroots? Y'all can do more than that. What's good, Netroots? Oh, we got some power on the way. Oscar Grant was murdered 3 blocks from my home. Uncle Bobby, I'm so grateful for you and all of the organizing that you've done that has encouraged us to stand up and fight. 10 years since the beginning of Black Lives Matter. What have we learned? What have we accomplished? Where have we fallen down? Where do we still have opportunities to build, to fight, to win? 10 years ago this week, Black Lives Matter was born. I was 32 years old with a dream and about 10 years of organizing under my belt. 10 years ago this week marks a milestone. Another phase of our movement was born. Back then, we were talking about pushing the very first Black president of this nation to go farther, to be bolder, especially as it related to Black lives. And just a few short years later, everything would change dramatically. Now here we are on the cusp of yet another shift, one that is ripe with possibility, but also one that demands that we take and implement the lessons of the last decade and apply them to the one in front of us. One lesson is that we need more of us to step up and step in to be the power that we deserve. No more throwing rocks at the castle from the outside. Instead, we are transforming power from the inside and throwing rocks at the castle from the outside. But this time, we're doing it in concert and in coordination with each other. Now, y'all, the brother I'm about to introduce and be in conversation with stepped up to say yes. He said yes to lead, he said yes to fight, and he said yes to trying to figure out how to win. And we thank him for that. And when I introduce him in just a few seconds here, and when he comes out here, I want y'all to stand for our brother. I want y'all to say thank you to our brother. I want y'all, I ask y'all, I beg y'all to keep encouraging our brother, to keep going. Let him know that we got his back. Y'all ready? He's so dope. Justin Jones. Is my brother. Yeah, are you feeling all that? Because that's for you. Can we give it some more? You don't have to stand, but can we get some more? Our brother, Justin Jones, is a community organizer in Nashville. He's a student of Fisk University and Vanderbilt Divinity School and a servant leader unafraid to put his body on the line for his community. He has fought for justice since childhood. As a college student, he organized for healthcare and against racist policing. He led campaigns for the expansion of Medicaid in Tennessee and the repeal of restrictive state voter ID laws. He's confronted systemic racism in the halls of power. He has challenged dangerous bills. He has inspired all of us, and he continues to speak truth to power at the state capitol. So please, again, give it up. It's so good to be here with you.
It's so good to be with you, sister. There's so much love in this room.
I hope you feel it. I really do. It's not easy doing what you're doing. And we want to say thank you over and over and over again. Now we're gonna get into some conversation, have a little chitty chat. But I want to start off because, we from the Bay. Anybody from the Bay? I heard it, okay. I heard it. So talk to me a little bit, Justin, about how the Bay has shaped your worldview and your organizing.
Well, even being here in Chicago is kind of a pilgrimage and homecoming for me because my family on my dad's side actually left Tennessee, moved to Chicago, and then moved to the Bay because they didn't like the snow in Chicago. And so I grew up in the Bay Area, Black, Indigenous, and Filipino, and somebody who came from a family that kind of, kept me awakened to what was happening. It was just another full circle, meeting Uncle Bobby, because I remember when the case happened, I remember the anger from my family at home, and I remember people in Oakland taking to the streets. And that was the first time I saw people power. I was in middle school.
Yeah, wow.
And so just growing up in the Bay, we have another close relative, Miss Frederica Newton, Huey P. Newton's widow, and one of my aunties in the movement. And so we have a lot of connections from the Bay, but you can't grow up in the Bay without knowing about what John Lewis, I guess, calls good trouble.
That's right.
But what we call turning up for justice, I guess.
That's right, that's right. We are lucky. Our aunties and our uncles, we see them in the grocery store, we see them at the doctor's office, and they always got game for us, right? I want you to talk a little bit, Justin, about the moment when you saw that something was wrong, but that you knew that you could do something about it. Do you remember when that was?
Yeah, in high school, growing up, I grew up in going to a high school in the East Bay where the school to prison pipeline was very present, organizing against the turning of our schools into mini jails. I remember organizing students to go to the principal's office in high school and being met with city police telling us that we, were trying to cause a riot when we were trying to meet with the principal about the issues that impacted us. And so it was that moment, as well as 2013 when George Zimmerman was acquitted, and I was in Florida with the NAACP youth chapter. And we just knew we had to do something.
Yeah.
And so your work is a lot of the inspiration of my journey. And I think it's so important to note too that there is that lineage, and there's people we look up to, and there's people who teach us. And there's two names I want to call in here are Harriet Parks and Tessie Bautista, my grandmothers, who were my teachers, who didn't get to go to school, but who taught me what love and justice was, who had more divinity than Vanderbilt Divinity School, who taught me what it looks like to embody what I believe in and to do stuff for generations who are coming up after. And so all that I am is because of my grandmothers, and even when I walk to the state capitol, I bring them with me every time I go into the capitol.
I love that. Shout out to the grandmamas. So, Justin, look, a couple of weeks ago, you were on my TV every single day. All day, every day. And I was cheering, not just because you're from the Bay, give it to Tennessee, I will, but because of the fierce, courageous, radical leadership that you were displaying alongside all of your people that you were organizing with, and really showing us two things. One, that it is not only important but necessary, even when we don't think a thing is possible, to fight for it. But two, also showing us that this fight around gun control is not like just a fight for white people. Gun control and gun violence, right, is a fight that impacts all of us, but it impacts some of our communities a lot differently. Yeah. And I think that you and the crew that you've been organizing with have really helped to show us, right, what it can look like to build a multiracial movement for something that we want without leaving anybody behind. So I want to ask you, Justin, because the cameras are gone now, I want you to talk with us a little bit about the work that is still happening. Where are things at? And then I got some other sub-questions in there for you.
Definitely, yeah. I think we really faced a moment that no one could ever have imagined in Tennessee when, the week of a mass shooting, thousands of young people, mothers, teachers walked out of schools and filled our state capitol.
Yeah.
And I remember what it was like to be on that side of the doors. And so when they came by the thousands to the Capitol, and our colleagues would not even let us say the word gun violence, would not even let us bring it up on the House floor. All they allowed were moments of silence. Wow. But the people were asking us to not be silent, to not be inactive, but to do something. Yeah. And I remember, some signs said, do something. And so all that happened was because of young people who took the initiative to come to the Capitol and demand better. Young people can't even vote yet. Young people who feel disillusioned with our politics, but who came to the People's House and really reclaimed it. Yeah. Reclaimed it from white supremacy, reclaimed it from the system of lobbyists who have hijacked our state legislature, and they're continuing to organize. I think one of the most powerful things is that our movement is multiracial, it's multi-generational, but it's also rural and urban, and it is people who they never expected to come to the Capitol together. And that's what scared them, is that it really was something that we had not seen in Tennessee in a long time. And so how did they respond? Not only by expelling us, but when we got back, they ended session 3 weeks early. We had 3 more weeks of session. They ended it, said we're ending session because they were so afraid of the people showing up in the People's House. And so we have a special session set for August 21st, but in between time, people are still putting pressure on them. They're still showing up. These young people, the Protect Kids Not Guns Coalition, are still organizing in rural counties. And it's powerful to see, because we see a transformation happening in Tennessee. I've talked to more rural white voters, even people in rural communities, who said that they have seen what we're up against, and that these extremists, that's what we'll call them, don't serve any of us. And so I think that we're gonna see a moment of transformation in Tennessee, and they're doing everything they can to try and delay it, but it's coming and it's inevitable.
Come through. Speaking of what we're fighting, the Tennessee state legislature really showed theyself. I was gonna say something else, but I'm on stage. When you get with the homies from the town, you just say the things, but I had to put that one, So they showed themselves. And I think it would be a mistake for us to just look at that and say, oh, well, these are just people who either are just bad people, right? Or kind of misguided. They actually have a whole strategy in place, and they're following a playbook. And the playbook, right, is called fascism. Yeah. You and your colleagues tried to stand up for what was right, elected colleagues, and they literally just tried to kick you out the government. Yeah. That was their response, like, you just gotta go. And you can't do that. You can't, you can't do that, right? I mean, we were all watching across the country like, bro, you can't, no, that's not how this goes. You can't just, So I want to talk about fascism. And I'm going to show my age a little bit, because, back in the day, we called everybody fascist. Everybody was a fascist. Anybody we didn't like was a fascist. But fascists are like real, it's a real thing. It's like an actual form of government.
Yeah.
You know, whole strategy to keep power in the hands of like one person, and then they like use violence and stuff to like enforce that. You know, it's like a real form of government. What is that looking like in Tennessee right now? Are you seeing the rise of fascism in Tennessee, and how are they trying to like enforce that?
So one thing I just want to be transparent about is I'm more nervous talking in this room of friends and progressives than I'm used to talking with all these racist white old men. And so I
know, you're like, woosah.
And when I'm with them, it's like I don't care how they react. But I care about what you all think. That's why I'm up here nervous, because I don't care what Speaker Cameron Sexton say. I will drag him, and I can go home and feel okay. And so that's kind of the attitude. My first week at the legislature, I was a new member, and I was excited. You know, we did the impossible. Before I was elected, I was arrested 18 times at the state capitol. I was banned from the state capitol for a year, so I knew what it was like to be locked out. In 2020, I slept outside the capitol along with other young people in the plaza for 62 days, trying to meet with the governor. And rather than meet with us, he had us arrested.
Yep.
In 2021, I couldn't get a job. I was charged with inciting a riot, assaulting the police, disorderly conduct. I couldn't even get a job driving Uber. You know, I mean, I was trying to figure out where to work, and so that's where I came from. So when I got into the capitol, I was excited.
Yeah.
And how did they respond? My first week there, I'm on the elevator. Senator Jack Johnson makes sure to tell me that you are worthless and you don't belong here.
Wow.
This is the environment.
Right.
You go to committee, you have Senator Paul Sherrill say, as we're talking about a death penalty bill, we should bring back hanging by a tree.
Wow.
We have members who filed bills to protect Confederate monuments because that was one thing that we finally got removed, and they were so angry about it.
Yeah.
The statue of KKK Grand Wizard Nathan Bedford Forrest that sat in the most prominent location in our capital.
Right.
And so, we love to go around the world talking about democracy, but in our state, we don't have democracy. I come from a state that is the birthplace of the Klan, and their children run our government.
Wow.
Their heirs run our government. And so after that experience with Jack Johnson, I started to realize that I'm not here to make friends, but we're here to make change.
Come on.
And I think that is what we have to be unapologetic. And in a state like ours, a lot of my colleagues, we got to be honest, we're with family. Even some of my Democratic colleagues, there's a timidity there.
Yeah.
They said, you're supposed to, even when I got expelled, Sister Alicia, they said, go up and apologize, and then maybe they won't expel you. This is what our leadership told us.
Wow.
To apologize. I said, you know who needs to apologize is the speaker to these families, to these young people.
That's right.
And so one thing I learned when we fight fascism, because it is fascism, it's one-party rule, is that we cannot bow down.
That's right.
That we have to go up there with the grounding of our ancestors. Tennessee is the birthplace of the Klan, but it's also the birthplace of the Nashville student movement. There will be no civil rights movement without Nashville. We are the city of Diane Nash, of John Lewis, of Bernard Lafayette. We are the city of students who said we're going to continue the freedom rise after the buses were bombed, and Anna said we are the state where that continued. And so we come from this duality of white supremacy, but we're also the state where Ida B. Wells challenged lynchings. We're also the state of Highlander folk school. We're also the state of the Clinton Nine. I mean, we have a powerful legacy, and so we're grounded in that. And that's what we see when we go into the Capitol. And so these fascists, yes, they rule our state. We have one-party rule. We don't allow dissents because everyone said, how was it to be expelled? What were you thinking? I said, it was just another day in the Tennessee General Assembly. Because we were not allowed to speak in committee. We're not recognized on the floor. We're not treated as equal members. And I think I got ruled out of order more than any member had been ruled to that point. Because when they shut off my microphone, I kept talking. And as you saw, when they shut off our microphone, I pulled out a megaphone out of my pocket.
Yes. So, look, speaking of stories they tell, I was all excited when they asked me, would you be down to talk to Brother Justin Jones? I was like, I guess so. I'm faking. I was like, yes, yes. And I was reading up, on your background. And I got on your Wikipedia page, Now, if I didn't have some sense, I would really think that you were trying to like, let me say this way. If I didn't have some good sense, what I would think was that you were some kind of violent, dangerous criminal. I read articles from your state's newspapers, same stuff. Now, I'm knowing this brother from the incredible, powerful work that he is doing to save our lives, and the way that our media is talking about you is really a thing. Now, the problem is we don't have a lot of media literacy in this country. So we read stuff, and we'd be like, man, I knew they wasn't about nothing. I'm just telling the truth. We read stuff about our leaders, our fighters, and we internalize it. Okay. But then I like read your stuff, and I was like, oh, he out here doing direct actions. He's like, I'm like, I see what happened here. One article I read said that you threw a cone through a window. I was like, no, the man tried to run him over. I'm gonna need you to put that part in the story, like actually and truly. So I wanna know how you deal with that, because I can imagine, just like, you know, this legislator told you, well, maybe if you go apologize, that's like a young person thing, go ingratiate yourself, and then it's also like a person of color thing too, right? Go ingratiate yourself and see if they'll give you some grace. How do you deal with the vehicles that are supposed to be telling our people, your constituents, what's happening and how they can get involved, distorting what is happening and distorting the story about you? What are your best practices around that?
Yeah, and I know you have navigated this, and we know that it's been done throughout history. You know, we see how the media portrayed the civil rights movement and our leaders, but I think one of the key things is that, and I want to recognize somebody here because one of my constituents is here. Miss Karen is here from Nashville up
What's
front
up,
here.
Miss Karen? Yeah.
And Miss Karen taught me something because she was door knocking with me in 2021. In 2021, when I was running against a city council member who we have 40 members of the city council. 39 of them endorsed my opponent.
Wow.
The vice mayor endorsed my opponent.
You gotta be.
The white unions endorsed my opponent. The only union that endorsed me was the black-led union in Nashville, because everyone thought I was this radical. But we went to the people. We went to the grandmothers. We went to our neighbors, and we talked to them.
Yeah.
And we broke through that false narrative, because the greatest way to get out of lies is just to go directly to the people. And let them know that, I think one of the news stations that you read is Tennessee Star, who has this infatuation, and who not only went after me, but went after my grandmother, which is why I took down all.
Grandma.
So went after my grandmother.
Now you know what?
And that was, that's that's where we might get violent.
You know we feel away. We feel away.
But it's just this was the reaction, and so but we went to the people and we just let them know that yes. They're gonna try and put up my mugshot, but let's put up the mugshots of the folks that we claim to love in Nashville. Nashville claims to love John Lewis. How many times was he arrested in Nashville? Right. And so how can we claim to love people for engaging in good trouble 50 years ago, but then condemn it today?
Yeah.
And so we just had to stand in that legacy. And I told the media, you can put up my mugshot. I'm smiling in my mugshot. Like, I'm not ashamed of my mugshot, because, I'm going to show my children that what I was doing was for them. Yeah. And so there's no shame there. And so I think that, going directly to the people and really staying rooted in that community. My grandmother couldn't, I keep saying my grandmother's on my spirit today, maybe because I'm in Chicago, but my grandmother couldn't come to my swearing in, and I know Miss Karen was there, so the community grandmothers came. They all came in white and just surrounded me when I walked into the Capitol. And that image of grandmothers walking to the Capitol together, we all had on our white. People think this white is new. We started this in January, and we walked in together. And when you see a movement of grandmothers walking in the Capitol, it doesn't matter if the Tennessee Star is saying he's a violent criminal, because grandmas be like, we're with him. That's
us.
And
he's ours, is what grannies say.
And the first time I was arrested was with a 78-year-old white grandmother named Miss Ellen.
Come through.
As we were sitting in the governor's office, and they decided to arrest the oldest member of the group and the youngest. And it was both of our first time getting arrested. But Miss Ellen has showed up. If you see, when I got sworn in, when I was reinstated, she was the one holding the Bible. And so we have remained rooted in community. And that's what scares them, is that we, no matter what they say about us, we know who we are. We know that, as you know, Maya Angelou says, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And so we know who we are standing with.
I'm a little bit obsessed with him. I don't know. Y'all too? Okay. Speaking of young people, I want to talk with you a little bit about why you said yes to running. You are currently the youngest person in the state legislature, and you're either the only or one of the only young people in that decision-making body. There's two. Myself
and Brother Pearson from Tennessee, yeah.
Saying no to elected office is not about youth. It's about not wanting to be in these bodies that, honestly, there's a stench. It ain't been working for us, so why would I go in there and take my time, my energy, my brilliance, and go try to like do something with it? And then we got a lot of people telling us, you know, that's not gonna do anything. And then maybe even like, you know, you're misguided if you think you're gonna change something from the inside. So I wanna hear from you, Brother Justin, like, why did you say yes? And what would you say to another young person who is considering doing what you did?
So when my predecessor announced that he was retiring, people started reaching out and saying that, you know, we want someone to run. And I also am the first non-white member to hold this seat.
Wow.
And so, you know, we were breaking through a lot of barriers, and our district has become a minority Black and brown district. And so it was talking to community and recognizing that for these issues that we've been fighting for a decade at the state capitol and trying to beg to be heard, that number one, there is such a thing as being too late in responding, and that we had to bring some urgency. There was no reason that we should have had to sleep outside for 62 days and no lawmaker would come out and even try and get us into the building, would not open the door. And so there's this quote from Fannie Lou Hamer that I love. She says, "Move on over, or we'll move on over you."
Come on.
Because we're moving on, moving on over. And I think that is the spirit of what we entered in, is that we just got tired of begging them to change. And so we said, let's change who's in those seats. And running for office, again, against a city council member who had all this support, it is intimidating. You know, it is something that, you know, a lot of people didn't even count us as you know, as viable. But again, it took organizing, it took coalitions that had come together who hadn't been united. And so I think, you know, the decision that really helped me too was to recognize that it can open a door for other young people to run. Because I remember when Representative Cooper passed away, that the predecessor to Brother Pearson, I remember calling him and said, "We need more young people here, brother. You know, you should think about running." And even now, as we're fundraising, one of the biggest things we're trying to do is recruit young people of color to run in our state, because 70% of the seats were unchallenged last election. And so we need to disrupt that. We need to get more young people to run. And we need to really, you know, there's a saying that Southern segregationists would say the South will rise again. And one thing I've been saying to people is, no, the South will rise anew. We are building something new in the South. And I think, that, you know, this courage, it has sparked something that's contagious in our state. Because even my colleagues, I've talked to so many of them, even on the Democratic side, who had just been stagnant. They didn't see anything beyond what had been happening. And we finally have broken the system where now people feel like our state is not something to give up on. You know, people are giving up on Tennessee. And if you go to our legislature, even though it's not just partisan politics, but there's 75 Republicans, 24 Democrats, probably 5 progressive Democrats. And so we are a super minority. But we're building up our movement in there. And so I think that is something I witness as well, is that by showing that you can be in here and still be grounded in community, still, you know, not be unbowed, I think it can hopefully set some type of model for our state, each of us together, because we do this as a unit. Like the 3 of us, when we got expelled, we were united. You saw Sister Gloria, our white sister from Knoxville, when she didn't get expelled, She didn't miss a beat when they said, why didn't you get expelled, Representative Johnson? Because of my skin color. She said it.
Yeah.
And that's the type of people we need, people who are not afraid to speak truth and who will hold them accountable.
Yep. I'm telling you, every time I saw you on MSNBC, I would stop what I was doing and just, I mean, you know, I was getting my grandma on too. Justin, I want to talk a little bit about what's next, because we're already in some real serious times. I mean, that's a fact. And it's about to there's about to be more pressure. And in the chaos of a presidential election year, there's both opportunities and challenges. So I'm curious if you can take us 6 months down the road, help us look into 2024, and tell us what is your vision and how can we support you?
Definitely. I think the first thing is that Tennessee hopefully was that canary in the mine, that them expelling us is something that set a very dangerous precedent. And we saw what happened to our sister, Zoe Zephyr.
Yep.
You know, we saw that this attempt at undoing democracy, we saw that it's connected to January 6th. That was the exact same thing they were trying to do there. And so we have to recognize that as we enter into this season, and this is the same thing I talked about at the White House, was that the threat of authoritarianism is real. It's a clear and present danger. These white supremacists are buying property in Tennessee. They're building compounds. They are preparing. And so we have to be clear about, you know, our opponents. One thing Diane Nash always told me, and it's something that I've kept with me throughout this season, and I know she's here in Chicago, and she's one of my mentors in the movement. She said, don't underestimate your opponent. And so we cannot underestimate what we're up against. And so I think, you know, one thing that we have to start doing is to look at these state legislatures in the South, especially as a front line. You know, it's not just the federal level, but it's these state legislatures where they are testing out. You know, my state was the first state to ban drag shows, shamefully, but we can't ban assault weapons. My state banned trans youth health care. My state, this session, my state is banning books. You know, we have some of the most restrictive anti-abortion laws in the nation, some of the most restrictive voting laws in the nation. And these are the people who voted to expel us, you know, because what they were trying to do was not just expel us, but expel the movements that we were speaking for when we went into those chambers and challenged this legislation. That's what they were trying to expel. And so recognizing that we have to not see places, you know, even the presidential election, they see our states as red and blue, or, you know, or purple, and they'll pay attention to purple states, but a state like mine, they'll just neglect, like, oh, there's nothing gonna happen there. Yeah. And we can't have that mentality, because we're showing that a state like Tennessee, that if you can change a state like Tennessee, you can change this nation. And I think that is again, the message I brought to Washington was like, look at our state. If we're able to break through the noise here, if we're able to build a multiracial, you know, multi-partisan, multi-faith, multi-generational movement in Tennessee, like, don't forget our state. You know, we need resources in our state. People stopped looking at Tennessee ever since Al Gore lost Tennessee. They kind of gave up on Tennessee. Yeah. But it's not a place that we've given up on, because those of us who are living there. And I think so we need people to see our state, to show up in our state. And to come to Tennessee as well, and to stand with us, because if it wasn't for the movement that was happening on the ground and the nation watching, they would have gotten away with expelling us. We would have been gone. Because the speaker, until 30 minutes before I walked into that chamber, had told us that he was not going to seat me on the floor. But he got afraid of the cameras. He got afraid of the people who were watching. He got afraid that if he didn't seat me, we had thousands of people. It wouldn't have been more people. Yeah. And I think it scared him. And then we sent him a letter from my attorney saying that we were going to sue him, because his resolution saying we're expelled does not override our state constitution. And so we were able to use those tools to push against him and be seated. So. Yeah.
What has it been like to have to go back into that chamber and work with people that, one, don't have your best interests at heart or the best interests of your constituency, but 2, really try to pull a Jack move. Like, how do you go back and sit at the table with folk like that?
Well, as I walked in after being restored, I walked in with the energy that they are in the find out portion of our movement. Like, so, number 1.
Pretty much.
And I mean, it's been interesting because there's been 2 reactions. Some of them, like the Representative Bud Holsey, who filed the resolution to expel me, was on the elevator with me that day. And I said, Representative Holsey, did you learn anything from this experience? And he tried to tell me that, I didn't want to do it. The speaker told me to do it. And so that's why I filed this. But, I really, I like you. It's not personal. I said, you tried to fire me. You tried to kick me out you tried to attack democracy.
Yeah.
It is personal.
It is definitely
And
personal.
so it's just, this is the insanity. And then you have other ones who have doubled down. And so, I'm running in a special election right now. They've spent, the speaker and his extremists, they're funding my opponent. The FOP is funding my opponent, but we know that people power is going to win, so it doesn't matter. I said, y'all can waste your money. And so, we're pushing forward, but it is, we're still unwelcome there. The week I returned, our microphones were still shut off. I've been stripped of all my committees, so I'm not on committees anymore. And so we're not treated as full members in that body. And so our fight is continuing. But one thing that we do have again is that we can get into the building and we can be on the floor and we'll make our voices heard on August 21st when we come back for a special session. We're having a special session around gun violence, and hopefully we can continue to put pressure on my colleagues to act, because that's what led us to the well. Was that we went to the well because 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults were massacred in a school, and all my colleagues had to offer were moments of silence. All they had to offer was ignoring these young people who said, we want to live. And so we're going to bring that righteous urgency, that fierce urgency, that indignation back into the halls of power. Whether you put us on committee or not, I'll be sitting up in the committee.
Come on.
And if I have to bring my own sign, because we can have to continue to push. And we as progressive in a state like my state, some people say, they're the supermajority, you should do what some of my colleagues have been doing for years, which is trying to accommodate and assimilate. Yeah. My mentality is that we're progressive. What do we have to lose? We should come in with boldness. We should come in. You can take a title. This is not my identity. Right. And we're not attached to these titles. Right. And I think that's what we have to bring into leadership. We need lawmakers who are willing to risk something. Risk not getting invited to the governor's Christmas party. Risk not getting invited to play golf. Risk, I don't want to go hunting with you. Y'all, they might shoot me. Why would I want to go with you?
Please don't go hunting with those people. Please don't.
But there are people who confuse proximity to power with power. Right. And they want to be proximate to white supremacists. That should not be our motivation. So that's what we have to keep grounded in, is that, when we got expelled, when they filed that resolution, Sister Alicia, I knew they were going to expel me. Yeah. And so when my colleagues said to apologize, I also was thinking, why would I apologize? The decision is made. This is a kangaroo court. This is a farce of democracy and of process. And if some people heard, they released some audio from the Republican caucus meeting that they didn't know they were being recorded in. Right. And they were so angry because they said, well, we had the votes in line, and they have this mentality that if Tennessee falls, the Southeast will fall. They really believe that we're fighting the Civil War again. That's the mentality that people were up against. Yeah. And so just recognizing that this is what they're thinking, this is their strategy of this new Southern strategy that they have. And so we have to be as strategic and as, have as much foresight in our movement, and find some type of solidarity in our movement, and bring together people who are being attacked collectively, and not do it as individuals or silos, but do it united as because the same people who expelled us attacked voting rights, attacked the LGBTQ community this year, attacked women's reproductive justice, attacked healthcare, are keeping their own constituents in poverty, where 1 in 5 children in my state live in poverty, where 12 rural hospitals have closed because we haven't expanded Medicaid. So we have to bring these coalitions of conscience together and let their constituents know that they're hurting you too. And that when we went to fight, it wasn't just for us, but it was for your children too. It was for those who send death threats to my office. We're fighting for your children too. Because we want to be free of this madness of mass shootings so that our children can flourish and thrive in this society. That's right.
I do not want this conversation to end. You see me, I'm over here getting comfortable. I'm like, so another thing. But we are running out of time. But I have one more question for you. I know, baby, that's how I feel too. Here we are, and it's been a decade since our battle cry, right? It's not the beginning of the movement. You just shouted out all the homies who got us here, you know, Sister Nash, Sister Newton, there's so many. But 10 years since our battle cry. What's the biggest lesson you feel like you've learned in this last 10 years that we need to take into the next 10?
I think one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and it's something I'm going to be vulnerable about too. Is that we have to recognize that this work is trauma. You know, it takes a toll on us, and if we pretend like these things don't impact us, we give this false narrative of us being as I'm trying to figure out how to say it. It's like we have to be honest about the toll of this work, and recognize that that we cannot do this alone, and that we are not some beyond human people who are not impacted. Like, this work will leave you depressed. It will leave you with anxiety. It will leave you, being brutalized by police and seeing police kill people. This is not normal, and it should not. And so we have to be honest about that and recognize that we need practices of buffer, some things that will help restore us and our humanity. I think that's something that we have to be honest about. And it took me a long time to say that, because for so long I wanted these troopers who I walked by every day in the Capitol, who had arrested me, who had lied on me, who had beat me. I wanted them to think that I was not affected by that. But that's not strength. Because what strength is saying that I was affected by that I had to go to therapy. But I walk into this Capitol now grounded and strengthened, and walk with my head held high, despite all of the madness that you did, despite all the lies, despite all the physical violence and mental violence and spiritual violence. Like, we're still here.
That's right.
But we're not, going to lie and say that it's not taking a toll. But the reason why we're doing this is because, I want my children to not have to do this. It's out of love for my children, but also love of grandma, and of ancestors.
That's right.
And so I think that is what's going to buffer us and sustain us in this work.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your willingness to teach and learn and serve. We owe a debt of gratitude to you, but the way we're going to pay that forward is we're going to stand right next to you and fight like hell to save our lives. Let's go.